Hello, today I thought I would do a video with a bit of show and tell for a change, instead of just looking at one boring document. I've made up several. A few weeks ago, I made a post about coping mechanisms and the impacts that the cashless card had on mine. I mean, I've always had rather good coping mechanisms to deal with stress and anxiety. I don't know how I learned it. I have had a whole lot of counselling through my life, and I've taken bits and pieces of what I was taught and managed to turn it into something that works for me. Hopefully this will actually help some other people as well who are struggling and need a way of coping with all the stress and anxiety that comes with this card. So yeah, first page. So basically there's two different types of thinking that people can do. They can do logical thinking or emotional. There's two different types of emotional thinking, but logical usually means you make plans, you action out those plans, you look for solutions, and you problem solve when problems come up with those solutions, and it helps you basically get through the problem without having a major breakdown and getting bogged down in the whole stress of the problem. So this is a type of thinking that you need to work on to get through stressful situations, because this side doesn't really help much unless you're in the constructive area. Emotional thinking, when you're in a stressful situation, you can think you're useless, it's all my fault, can't do anything right, I can't do this. It's all bogging you down and preventing you from getting through what you need to do to solve the problem and move on. But constructive emotional thinking can be helpful. Thinking that you can do this, you can solve it, you'll be all right, everything will be all right as long as you find the solution, work through the solution, and keep going. So when a stressful situation happens, usually this is how it works out. This situation happens. First step is, what do you need to do? You figure out what you need to do to get out of the situation or solve the situation or whatever it is, and then you make plans. You can make a list or you just think it out through your head. Listing does help a lot, because that way you see everything you need to do in order. Then you have to decide what you need to do for each plan that you make. And you think logistically with this one, not the other one. You think logistically and you say, what do you need to come first? Because sometimes to do one thing, you have to do something else before that can happen. And if you don't do what needs to come first, then you're just going to get stuck. Then if you do make your plans, well, when you make your plans, you have to think of what further problems could come up while you're doing those plans. Because sometimes you might make a plan and something stuffs it up and you can't do it. So you think of solutions you can have for those problems and how you can prepare for them. Then you think of, will you need help? And what services are available to help you with this situation. For example, if you have a family emergency, your fridge dies or your car breaks down, or you need spend money on something else urgently and you can't pay your electricity bill, you can get a emergency assistance plan through Ergon Energy or your usual electricity company, and it can provide you with up to $750 every 2 years. You can't apply for part of it 1 year and then a few months later need more. You can only apply once every 2 years. That can help you pay your electricity and ease up the burden of an unexpected bill, for example. Then you implement the plans. If you need the services, use the services. You look up your solutions and your preparations and do that. Once all that, your problem's solved, the stressful situation or the emergency is over, then there's plenty of time to start emotionally thinking again. You can break down, you can cry, you can scream, you can start thinking of all the things that could have happened. That's when you allow the emotions to rise, but usually because you've solved the problem, you start doing constructive emotional thinking instead of destructive, because you've solved the problem. It gives you a better mindset for the future to be able to solve problems in the future. And once all that's done, you get back to emotional stability. You don't have panic attacks, you don't freak out, you don't have an absolute mess to deal with in your brain because you're constantly thinking and worrying and planning and stressing, and it's all hunky-dory again. This is how I usually have dealt with stressful situations in the past. I mean, it is very effective. It's kept me alive for this long. It's kept me in a house. It's kept my bills paid. It's provided me with a very good skill to basically do everything that I need to do to make sure that I've got somewhere to live and everything. So then the cashless card came in. I didn't realize at first how much the cashless card would stretch my coping mechanisms to the limit. I mean, I have been doing this logical thinking, planning for my whole life pretty much, and I haven't had a problem until the cashless card came in. Because this is how it basically went. I got put on the card. So what do I need to do to get off the card? I look into a well-being exemption. At that stage, there was no other option. That's all you could do to get off it, pretty much. I made plans to see a social worker and the doctor. What I need to do those things was go to Centrelink and make the doctor's appointment. What needs to come first? I had to see the social worker first to find out what info I needed from the doctor, so I did that first. Problems. I could have to wait a long time to see the doctor, could wait up to 2 weeks to see them if they're busy, or I could be unable to afford the psychiatrist once my mental health plan came through. Unfortunately, those things were out of my control, so I couldn't really have a solution for them, but that's all right. I know what I need to do. Even though it's out of control, I can still do it. Services were available. There's disability advocates. If you look up your town and disability advocate, usually your town has Bundaberg at least, has a website with all the different social services available, including disability advocates. They can help you with things like applying for disability or filling out paperwork or basically advocating for you when you're unable to. And the social worker would have been there for support for mental health if I couldn't afford the psych. They can help you with mental health problems. Plans. These plans can't do anything. It's out of my control. I get trapped. I hurt my back, which meant I was trapped in bed in excruciating pain. I couldn't go out. I couldn't drive anywhere. I couldn't do anything. I could barely get to the toilet. I was in so much pain. And being nerve pain, painkillers didn't work. So that just threw me right out because I couldn't physically or or constructively do anything to help get me out of the problem. This is when the coping mechanisms I have begin to fail because I can't solve the problems. It's out of my control is the biggest problem with this. So, because I can't solve the problems, the emotional negative side, the negative, destructive emotional thinking started to rise up because my depression and anxiety was going through the roof. I couldn't relieve the stress of being on the card. I couldn't plan my way out. I was unable to do anything except resort to further medication. So now I'm on 3 medications where I have never needed them before because I had my usual response, which worked my whole life. So to go further in depth, specifically for the problem with the card, the problem really was that when I had the major breakdown that I had, the problem was that I was stuck on the card. I didn't feel that I deserved to be on the card. I've never drunk alcohol. I've never smoked, never gambled, never taken non-prescription drugs. I can't have kids. I don't even drink coffee. I am incredibly boring. I don't break the law. I work as I can. My pain limits that working, but I do it because I need to be able to eat. And without it, I wouldn't be able to eat. So my stress and anxiety started to increase. I started having panic attacks and anxiety attacks. I'd end up going to the doctor or the hospital saying, I think I'm having a heart attack because I just couldn't breathe. I had massive pain in my chest. It was just not a good experience at all. I had about 4 panic attacks before the doctor finally said, well, it's obvious you're not coping. You need help. How about we try this? So I started the medication because of that. But the planning stage was I was looking into the wellbeing exemption and looking for other ways off the card. I made the appointment with the social worker and the doctor, and then I waited to be asked for proof or evidence. I waited and I followed up and they couldn't tell me anything. They just said wait. So months later, my wellbeing exemption was rejected. They stated that all my concerns regarding the card were easily solved by simply changing how I do everything regarding my budget. And I mean, I wasn't in debt, my bills were paid, my rent was paid, I was fine. So changing everything would mean that I was no longer able to budget properly. They said that I'd have no problem with direct debits, which was false. They said that I'd have no problems paying my rent, really false, because they refused to let me pay it and without any warning. And they said that it worked just like any other bank card. Really false. I mean, this is not like any other bank card at all. Not a single one that I have ever found. And if my bank decided to bring in a card that worked like the cashless card, I would leave immediately. If I had any choice in the matter, I would leave, which anyone would do if they were in that position. So then they brought in new exit legislation, and I thought, sweet, I can plan my way out of this. I can go back to my logical thinking process. I can get out of this. I start to get my mental health back together. I'm thinking more positively. I think that I can get out of it. So I start the planning stage all the way back here again, and I research info I need to prepare, but there's little or no information for months. I mean, they kept such a tight lid on the whole process that no one could actually plan to be able to get off the card, because you didn't know what they would need, you didn't know what evidence you'd need, you had no idea what questions they'd ask. It was just terrible. Terrible planning, terrible terrible bringing it out. I can't remember the word for it, I'm sorry. There is a word for it. My brain's just not working because my fibro is flaring up and it's making me forget words. So then on the 1st of July, I called in and I applied to exit it. They said that they'd call me back when my exit was going to be done. Months. 3 months it was. Stuck on the card, powerless to change it, no way of being able to plan my way out. My mental health started to deteriorate again, and then the event happened where I was unable to pay my rent, and my stress and anxiety just went through the roof. I could not cope with it. I had a major breakdown. I was just spending all day thinking it would be so much easier if I was dead. I was lying in bed in pain, thinking of all the different ways I could just end it all, because I couldn't see any other way out of it. I couldn't work full time. I was in pain. I couldn't fix anything. I was stuck. There was just no way for me to get off the card and be able to have control of my life again. I broke. This card broke me. For the first time in my life, it broke me. So I had decided that I should go seek mental health help further, because I've had friends take that step in the past, and it might end your pain, but it just passes it on to everyone else. So it's not really been an option, but this card just makes you think that there is no other option. It's your only option. So coping mechanisms failed because there was just no way that I could possibly go through my usual steps. There was nothing I could control. There was no way to plan. I was just going into a massive depressive spiral. Thinking back on it now, with me, how heavily medicated I am now, I don't know how I didn't just drive off a cliff or something, because that looked like my only option. I added the doctor's letter saying that I wasn't coping and my mental health was failing to my application for the around here they've brought out the form to fill out, so you could apply with a form and give them all the information they needed. So I did that and added the doctor's letter to it, and I'm still waiting 3 months later to hear anything at all. I mean, there is nothing. I've had a call, they've asked me some questions, they've said that they're not able to tell me when my application will be seen or have anything done with it or anything at all. I've started getting stressed again because I've had to move again because my ex-housemate slashed my tires and I didn't feel safe living there anymore. So one of the questions they ask you in your exit application is, have you ever been evicted or have you moved house recently? And now I've had to move house again for the 3rd time in a year, and I just have no idea if it will count against me, even though I had to leave for my own safety. The whole process is just, it's a stonewall. They're just stonewalling us. They're not actually going to let us get off the cards. To date, there has not been a single person from the 1st of July who has been exited off the card with the exemption. There has not been a single person let off at all. We've had our self-autonomy and self-determination robbed from us. We've had our right to presumption of innocence until proven guilty taken from us. We've been relegated to the status of someone with less rights than a criminal, despite never having committed a crime. A criminal gets their day in court, they have evidence and proof brought against them, they can challenge it, they aren't just slapped with, oh no, you're definitely guilty just because you exist. I mean, the whole being trapped thing is why my coping mechanisms failed. No other reason. There wasn't, I admit that my physical health didn't help with that at all, but without all of this stress and anxiety, I could have coped with it like I have been for years. But with this, I just can't do it. I just can't. I have no way off this card. No one does, really. And with all that, this fails. What has done for my whole life has completely failed just because of this card. There is no other reason for it. I can't think of any benefit to having been on the card, except it's made me go out and meet people. I've spoken to many senators and MPs. I have talked to Keith Pitt in person. I have told him my problems. I went with other people and we told him our problems. He is lying every time he says that he has not heard of any problems with the card. He is flat out lying, and it is despicable, Keith Pitt. This is despicable. This is not how an elected official should treat his constituents, because no matter what you say, us people on social security, we are your constituents as well. We don't deserve to be treated worse than criminals. We deserve to have a life. We deserve to be able to pay our rent without having to beg for permission. We deserve to have the same rights as anyone else in Australia. Anyone else. Just because we receive social security is not an excuse to treat us as not even lower class citizens, because he doesn't consider us citizens at all. I'm just disgusted with how he has treated all of us. But I'm not going to quit fighting against this card. I'm going to fight against the injustice. I'm going to speak up for everyone who is afraid to speak up for themselves because they fear retribution. I've been doing this. I've been fighting against this for years now, and they did rescind my exemption for being under a job search agency, because I went through a program of support for 2 years and the social worker said, no, we can't do anything. We're going to exempt you from all this and you should apply for disability. But I've had to wait over a year to be able to see specialists. I've had to do a whole lot of gathering of proof because they only accept evidence that's less than 2 years old. I have to see a disability advocate for help in applying for the disability pension. Now that I have internet again, I can start seeing all my specialists with telehealth. So I'll be able to get more proof, more evidence, and hopefully get on the disability. And hopefully they won't manage to get through this new bill and make it able to be passed out to disability and carers and aged pension, because all of those people trapped on this card, we are going to see deaths, because I might have been strong enough to be able to get help, but I don't know if all of these thousands and thousands of people will be, not when they're already stretched to the limit of trying to survive on New Start, because it is just so hard. It really is. I'll put a link in the description. I've started a GoFundMe to help me get a car for work, because if I can't, I need my car to be able to work, and if I don't have a car, I don't work. If I don't work, I can't afford to eat. Unfortunately, it's just how low the New Start payment is. I don't go anywhere, I don't do anything, I don't have any luxuries really. I use internet for telehealth and to do my course. Other than that, I have a very, very quiet life, so it's not like I'm going out splurging. I've already managed to get together with the help of some very, very generous people. Thank you all so much. I've managed to get together $1,200, but it's not quite enough to get a car that's not going to break down every few months. So if you could please just share the video and share my GoFundMe, I would be ever so grateful, because it will help me be able to keep working, and it'll help me be able to take people to meet with senators and MPs and get their experiences out, and hopefully we can beat this thing, because I don't know if anyone is strong enough to go through this, because I certainly wasn't, and I have been able to go through some shocking things in my life. So thank you for listening. Hopefully it's been an informative video and I haven't rambled too much. Please share it around. I'd really appreciate it. And hopefully this will help some people with coping in general, not just with Indu. Thank you.